Here's a look at the rod out of the car. I ended up cutting off a little bit more here, so to try and get rid of that binding point. I'll just give you guys some measurements, and if this works, then you can go off of these. So from the bottom of the threading to the bend, probably call that 7 inches where I started bending there. 7 1/4 is right about where the bend is, and then go from that scratch mark, which was 7 inches, from up there to the end. We're looking at 9 1/4, and I guess if you're set it on this package, you wanted to know how far to bend it over. About 4 1/2 in the bottom corner there, and that should work. Well, it seems like that little bit of a trim on that rod and repositioning the little lever there, because I shortened up the rod, I had to, but seems like it worked pretty good. First, neutrally drive, second, first. First still a little tight because I got to shorten that bolt right by the firewall. It's contacting the header, but coming back up, it's nice. Alright, new setup through the gears. Beauty, doesn't touch the header at all. So an explanation of what's going on there is there's the pivoting eye there that's on the shaft. It's threaded, and then there's a locking nut to lock that in position. I didn't end up locking that just to give it a little bit more movement. It'll never thread off of there. And then the next two nuts are locked together, but not pinching that pivoting eye tight. It has a slight bit of movement just to let it be free. And then those two Teflon bushings are sandwiched between there onto the shifting linkage. A little simple deal I picked up here from a company called Guage. I looked at a few of them, but this one was fairly cheap, and it's just plugs into the OBD2 plug, but gives you everything that you want to know about your engine. I don't know how much it's going to show with this PSI harness, how much that harness picks up and sends back. Once I get my mass airflow sensor installed and I start running this thing, I'll have a good idea of what it's going to show. I don't think it will show fuel PSI, I'm not sure, because I have a different fuel system now, but it's working with the temperatures and a few other things. Intake temperature. I don't know if the tack will work through there. I got my tack figured out now. But yeah, you can put up to 8 things on a page, so yeah, for the price. I will be getting a mechanical boost gauge and probably temperature and oil pressure, just to be safe. So here's that mass airflow plate I was talking about that came in. Just cut in a little slot where I wanted to place my mass airflow sensor. Tried to center it as best I can and get it nice and straight. I just measured from the seam lines of the pipe on both sides and then centered it there. Cut the hole to proper size. Slide that in. Just going to drill a hole and screw this down. Probably do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And I'll probably put a thin bead of silicone just on this aluminum mating face here where it mates against the plastic just to make sure it's sealed. Just a thin silicone on there, and yeah, that should work. No problem. There's that little PCB thing I threaded into the underside. There's the mass airflow installed. I ended up getting a extension for the MAF sensor, just called PSI, and they built me one and sent it out. Well, I got my rad overflow today. I went with a brand, Canton. Got it from Summit Racing. It's comes as a whole package, come with all this stuff installed, the cap, a few different fittings for the bottom, like 90 or straight with a nipple, and then a plug, which I put up here because I want the overflow to go in, whatever it pushes out, and then it can suck back in what it wants. This cap breathes. Yeah, pretty simple deal. Just mounted it up with the aluminum brackets that I made again. I would spend more time, you know, centering the bolts and making everything super nice, but I really tried to use a lot of the factory holes on this car without drilling too much of that, so that's why a lot of my mounting bolts aren't centered and whatnot. But yeah, pretty much the final piece in the engine bay on my part, other than the wheel wells. I'm looking into getting some of those fabricated, just some simple deals, but yeah, that'll be my next project. Yeah, so here's another little bonus of that Ultra Gauge OBD2 plug-in gauge. It can tell you your engine codes. Any codes that come up, you can clear them, or at least you got the numbers to go by to see what's happening. I ended up picking up these two codes. I'm running open headers, so I'm thinking it might be thinking that it's too lean because of that, but yeah, something I'll work on.